It's like, I mean, because I know you're now wife, like I have no comment other than like, what a gamble.
Yeah, she's
But
now sitting right across from me,
just
regretting every day.
quietly judging you. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to this episode of Educative Sessions. My name is Lee Ngo, and I am the community manager here at Educative. Educative makes it easy for authors to provide interactive and adaptive courses for software developers. And these sessions are a multi episodic campaign to engage people in the developer world about their coding experiences. My guest today is Graham McBain. Graham is the technical community manager for Move.io. And today's talk is titled Your Website is Terrible, a leap of faith from a career in real estate. Graham, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Glad to be here.
So, Graham,
Lee,
how are you doing?
I'm well.
Let's start with your journey. And of course, I'm pretty familiar with your journey. I was, working alongside with you back in almost over 5 years ago, if you can believe it. We were working together, and
Ooh.
I didn't know this in our conversations before we were preparing for this talk that you were actually in real estate before you jumped into coding, and that kind of blows my mind a little bit. Let's start off with your journey there, and then go from how you went from real estate to the place that you're, I guess, in now.
Yeah. So real estate is the joke with real estate is that if you can fog a mirror, you can be a realtor. And so once I became a realtor and got into that space, I really decided that it was something that was great in the short term, but I really wanted something else. And previously to being a realtor, I'd started a company and toyed with the idea of getting into technology and software. And so I saw this opportunity to build a website for a really famous realtor in the area, and I took it, and that's really where the point of this conversation takes off.
Got it. Got it. And while you were working with this firm, there was something that you noticed while you were there that you took a huge initiative. In my opinion, one that would likely get people not employed with that situation. So, walk us through that. Like, what happened there that led to an interesting opportunity for you?
Yeah, it was actually before I started with him, so it's how I got the job, not how I didn't lose the job. But in real estate, as most people might know, you get your real estate license, and then you don't really work for Remax or anything like that. You just they are brokers, and you as a realtor have to quote hang your license with them. So it's just a very informal relationship. But I was volunteering at a event. I met this guy who was a really powerful, successful luxury real estate seller and developer, and I knew that I wanted to work for him. So I looked at his website. It wasn't very good. I knew a little bit about SEO, so I knew that he wasn't doing a lot of things that you needed to do from an SEO perspective, and that his site was just antiquated. So one day we were having lunch, and I told him that his website was terrible, and he could be doing all these other things. And he was like, "Well, do you think you could do better?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And so he said, "We'll come to my office next week, and we'll talk about it." So, I frantically sort of looked at how to do that. We sat down in his office. He said, "How does $10,000 sound? And I'll give you an office." And I was like, "Great, sounds good." So, sat down in the office that he gave me, and I just Googled, how to build a website, and started working. So, yeah, and I just kind of put one together, and uh, ended up being better than the one that he had, like I thought, and that was sort of my first journey into getting paid to write any kind of software. I think I wrote maybe one line of JavaScript. It's like edited a line of JavaScript and didn't know what I was doing, but it was technically coding.
Right, right. So, this person offered you $10,000 in an office based on the sheer confidence, I'm presuming, that you
Oh
had in
yeah,
making this site. But you weren't quite sure of what you were doing until you sat down and was, commissioned to do so. Like, tell what were those early moments like? Like, what did you do in order to get started on this? Like, what were the questions that you had to ask yourself in order to get to that point?
I mean, I knew that it was possible, right? I knew I'd been around. I was interested in technology. I read like Engadget and the sort of technology sites, and I'd been on enough Reddit subreddits. There's this idea that if you really want to understand something, go find the memes of that community, and then you can understand it really quickly. So like, I understood the meme that like WordPress is website building for dummies, and I understood the meme that like any kid can build a website. And though I was, in my late 20s, I still consider myself a kid. So armed with that information, I was like, well, I'm sure I could figure this out. And I've met some people that build websites for people on WordPress, and I was like, yeah, they're not doing anything special here. It's definitely something I could do. So just basically not having a fear of it. I think there's something you see with a lot of older people where they're using a computer and they're afraid that if they click a button, it's going to like the computer's going to start on fire.
Right.
And it's just not having that fear, allowing that to take over, but getting deeper into the machine.
I think that's an awesome way to frame a lot of how coders operate, is that a lot of people presume that you need to know everything or know a substantial amount of code before you get started. But for many people, when they get into their journey, it's really more of a psychological question. It's really more of a question of calming that anxiety, calming that negative voice in your head, and jumping right in. And I've known you enough to be someone who's fantastic at this, at like not even worrying about the questions of what you know and don't know, but it's really more of a question of what I'm going to eventually learn in time, right? And so after you were done with that website, what was the reaction from the person who commissioned the project? Were they happy with it? Did they have feedback? Were they what
Yeah,
was the overall experience?
there was a really interesting thing, which is probably another good lesson, which was I would research stuff, implement it, go in and say, I think we need to do this. I think we need to do that. What do you think? And he would look at me and go, I don't know. I hired you. What do you think? And so I learned pretty quickly that like people hire technologists to do a job, um, to do it. They don't want you to come to them with questions. They want you to come with them with solutions. So I learned pretty quickly that what I needed to do was walk in and say, we did this, it's working this way. Um, and then not even tell them what I'm gonna do next, just tell them what has been done. And that's typically what a lot of people want. But what ended up happening was the website performed better than it had previously. We got more leads from that site than we did from the previous website, mostly just because I made it easy for people to contact. And also, instead of just having the phone number to the office on the website, I put a phone number that went through tracking. So they would call a number, it would redirect to the office line, and then I knew this many calls came to the office from the website. So
Wow.
really just provided better metrics and visibility to him, and so he was stoked about that.
That's fantastic. And these are all like initiatives that you took. There was no feature request or no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he didn't know how to request a feature. He would ask me to like add a new region or post a time he was interviewed, but there was no like I was I was the web team, So
Right, right. So after that project, what happened next for you? I mean, was there a continuation of working on this website with this company, or did something become inspired within you to pursue something else?
yeah, I mean, I worked as a realtor for a little while. I worked with them just because that was sort of quick money, right? And then $10,000 doesn't take you as far as you think it is. It will. So I had to make other money. But after doing that, I started getting into the sort of professional development side of things. So um, buying houses in bulk on behalf of investors. And that led me to some process automation. So like I got to a point where I could do maybe 3 clicks and send an offer on a house. So I would just like rapid fire 50, 100 offers a day to random houses and get emails back from the realtor like, this is an offensive offer. And it's like, okay, we'll move you out of our process. Um, but that was sort of my first, they say before you learn to code, you should learn how to like automate processes to get that understanding. Um, and so from there, I was like, well, I want to do this. I want to build websites. It seems like it makes more money. I had a friend of mine and I asked him what to do. And he said, every jerk is a web designer. So don't go be a web designer. And this was the time when like a web designer was someone who would just like mock up something and then say, go build that, and didn't have to have any understanding of HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. He said, learn backend coding, learn how to be like a Ruby engineer. And so I started going to like Ruby meetups, and then I heard about Galvanize, where you and I met in Denver, and I asked my fiance if she wanted to uproot her entire life and move to Denver so I could learn to code, and she was like, "Yeah, why not? I've already bought this horse, so might as well see where it takes me."
It's like, I mean, because I know you're now wife, like I have no comment other than like, what a gamble.
Yeah, she's
But
now sitting right across from me,
just
regretting every day.
quietly judging you. Yeah. At the same time, I mean, in all seriousness, I think it's been you're not that. I mean, I hate that I'm just going to sit and analyze you, but you're not the type of person who makes a flippant decision. Like, these things are explored, and they really require this leap of faith. And I think that's a constant theme that we're seeing here, is that there's a fearlessness. I think that's quintessential to you, that is seeking a better opportunity, but not in a way that's a gamble. That these are calculated risks, I would say. So for others who are thinking of making that leap of faith, what is your advice to them? Right? I think you and I have both experienced this as people who were in community building and constantly engaging with people who had that question of like, I'm considering this career, I'm considering this kind of life, but I'm not sure if I have it within myself or if it's right for me. What were your responses to those kinds of questions?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people who are finding themselves wanting to jump into technology, it's probably because other paths haven't worked out. They maybe tried a lot of things, and it just isn't providing them with the life or career that they want. And I had done that. I'd done real estate. I had done just too much to mention. And so what I said to myself was, okay, Malcolm Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? So, and that's roughly a decade. So I'm just going to dedicate the next decade to software, whatever that means. Those are my only guardrails, is that whatever I do has to be in software. And I'm actually 8 years into that now. And it's been really good. And I'm starting to think about what are my next 10 years going to be. But for somebody, I would just say, like, pick a path, and it can even as broad as software, right? You can get a little bit more narrow, but it's easier to just say, like, I'm going to do this thing, and choosing software is a very good path. Even if you don't end up as a software engineer, if you end up software adjacent, you will be much better off than you have been in the past. So right. I think that's a just pick something and go for it, and dedicate yourself to it.
That sounds great. Believe it or not, Graham, we're actually almost up or out of time.
I talk a lot, so I don't believe that entirely. Yeah.
Because we're having fun, and because these things flow like crazy. So I'd like to give you an ample amount of time to talk about something that you're working on, or if you'd like to give a long-winded, shameless plug about something, that's totally fine too. If you want to talk about a certain idea that you talked about before this show, I'm not going to stop you, or not. Hey, if you want, you got to take the leap of faith. You got to take the leap of faith, all right? Across different dimensions, you got to go for it. So the floor is yours, Graham. Like, what would you like to talk about?
Yeah, super easy. So I work for a company called Move. I've been in software, like I said, for 8 years. Recently, before Move, I was in the cryptocurrency space, and that was pretty fascinating. But I said I needed to learn a little bit more about banking and how that works, and that's like snooze fest, but it's actually pretty fascinating. So Move is the first company that's really embraced open source technology in fintech. So everybody makes jokes about banking software and how it's written in COBOL on servers that live on premises and yada yada yada. That is like so true, it's not even funny. You may not know this, but your local bank branch runs all the software on their computers on a server in the back room of that local bank branch, which is like so insane. That's why, like, when you go to apply for a loan from Wells Fargo, even if you bank at Wells Fargo, the lending department uses servers in a different room. So that's why they don't speak to each other, and they can't just use your banking information to
They
give
have to
you a
send
loan.
like a messenger, and then like there's
They
a bunch of
literally
sheets
fax
go to
information to
right,
another
right.
branch
Oh my
of
gosh.
Wells Fargo. It's like totally insane.
Right,
Um,
right.
so ACH, wires, IRS data, all this, all the sort of plumbing of the financial industry is written on antiquated technology. What Move does is we've built open source libraries that take that antiquated technology and turn it into Go code and make it available via an HTTP server. So um, it makes building fintech faster, and we just have like this incredible community of software engineers from some of the best fintechs and banks in the world, that all work together to make these low level open source protocols better for people to build. And it's just really incredible. So I feel really lucky to get to be there. I get to talk to some of the smartest people in banking in the world doing stuff like this, and help move the financial world forward, and create better banking products for everyone. So I think that's a pretty good pitch. I'm only a few months into the job, so
Yeah.
you'll let me know. But yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Well, that's awesome. And I find it, everything that you're saying, I've heard working with other people who work in the banking industry, and every industry they say is ripe for innovation, but it's fascinating to see how hungry financial industry is as well. Whether it's regarding security or whether it's just regarding just basic kind of communication and the management of just our information. And I'm glad that you're finding a lot of value and interest in this, especially coming from, I think you were working a lot recently with crypto. And I'm interested. I mean, that was a whole nother talk to poke your mind about, like, you're dabbling in that space, and how it transitions into the kind of work you're doing now. But we'll reserve that for later. Graham, always a pleasure. Always fun to talk to you. It's always fascinating, and I think it's largely because you make things fun, you make things engaging, and I hope that, like, there are plenty more conversations we'll have in the future, because of the wealth of experience that you have, and I think a lot of people want to hear those stories too. So. For us, that concludes our educative session with Graham McBain. I want to thank Graham so much for coming out to the show. And also, I want to thank you all for watching this as well. Our next show is coming up relatively soon. And please check out our social media and our main accounts to see what's on the schedule. And you can also learn a little bit more about Educative itself at educative.io. So for all of us here at Educative, happy learning. Thank you all so much. Thanks so much for watching our session. Be sure to watch more sessions below and subscribe to our channel to get the latest stories. Also, follow us on social media and check us out at educative.io. Happy learning.